entrepreneur, Mr. Shaun.
There's a concept, an idea that I hope to teach you that will last long beyond our time together. And in part, I know, like you know, that injustice is going to continue. That day in and day out, whatever metric of injustice we're looking at, that it doesn't appear as if it's going to slow down. And I want to teach you a concept that I think will help you understand it, put it in its proper context in the history of the world. The technological improvements confuse people into thinking that humanity is getting better. And he said when he actually laid out all of human history, that it is not, if you will, this steady incline of human beings getting better and better and better. And he said very much it was more like, he described it more like a mountain range that goes up and down, high and low, and that when he studied all of human history, that sometimes it seemed to dip, and the evil and the destruction would be terrible, and sometimes there would be inclines, and there would be these extended periods of peace. But he said, no, what's getting better is technology. And I had elders from the Civil Rights Movement tell me, Shaun, in the 50s, when we were integrating schools in the 50s and 60s, never would we imagine then that a police officer would grab one of our children and do to them in a school. Like, they always felt like once they went into the school, they were subjected to horrific abuse from students. But the concept that an officer would go into a school and snatch a girl up and toss her like a rag doll, it's a new idea. And since July of 2014, each of us have seen so much horrific death of black bodies that it doesn't even quite move us the way it used to. So much so that there are a few stories of unarmed black men and women who've been killed here in Texas that people locally seem to care about, but nationally, folk are exhausted. And there are some horrific stories here in Texas that I just knew in my mind that when people heard them, it was going to catch on. But people have fatigue. That it's so much, so often. And if 1,200 people were killed last year, you're talking about a little more than 3 people a day. The book, The New Jim Crow, but haven't read it. And like, owning it is not reading it, okay? And I would love for you to own it and read it. Because there's a phrase that we say, and I used to say it. I often look at our criminal justice system and like, this thing is broken. And I hear people say it every single day. And what Michelle Alexander, who's an amazing law professor at Ohio State, says is no, the system is not broken. It is perfectly designed, and it is functioning the way the people who designed it intended it to function.
Hi, Mr. King. Do you think the first step in creating that change would be having more people like you, or just like us, coming in and taking like political offices?
Yes, yeah, I do. It's a great question. Let me give you like a 3-part answer to that, okay? So, over the past 2 years, there have only been a handful of police officers charged with murder in spite of all of these numbers, okay? And there are way more problems than police brutality in this country, okay? But I'm using that as an illustration. African Americans represent less than 4% of prosecutors in the United States. But get this, represent 52% of the cases where police officers were charged. So that tiny percentage of African American prosecutors are responsible for over 50% of the officers who were charged. Now let me be clear, being black does not mean being righteous. Because there are several terrible black prosecutors across the country. But having a cultural understanding and a frame of mind to understand that, yeah, this is not right. I'm friends with a family who lost their loved one in Atlanta, and they just charged the officer a few months ago, and it was a black prosecutor. And so what happens is, it is hard to be black and be a prosecutor for 10 different reasons. In part because the system is currently designed primarily for you to prosecute black people.